I still remember the rattle of my breath the night she packed her last suitcase, her perfume lingering in our empty bedroom like a mocking ghost. She didn't flinch when I begged her to stay, just stared through me with tired eyes, saying she'd finally found someone worthy of her dreams. My heart felt like it was ripped from my chest, but I couldn't stop her from walking out that door, her footsteps echoing through the hollowness she left behind. And for half a year, my world froze under a suffocating blanket of grief, until she showed up again, trembling, begging me for a second chance. My name is Jacob Martin. For nearly 3 years, I believed I'd built a content life with Fiona. We weren't perfect, but I loved her with everything I had. Our little rental house felt like home. Chipped paint on the windowsill where she once tried to cultivate herbs, the living room rug we'd purchased together at a flea market, and the small bookshelf crammed with novels we'd collected. Every corner held memories of laughter, arguments, reconciliations, the tapestry of life shared between two people determined to make it work. Then, out of nowhere, came the news that she'd been seeing somebody else. Actually, not just somebody, a millionaire. It sounded absurd, like a plot twist from a soap opera. But to her, it was a ticket out of the mundane life she felt trapped in. She called me ordinary, said she needed more excitement, more success, more grandeur. Her words gutted me. She gave me a final, pitying look, whisked away her clothes, and left me in the rubble of our relationship. In the immediate aftermath, I drifted through days in a fog. Friends coaxed me to go out to talk, but I felt numb, like a puppet performing daily tasks without emotion. My job as an insurance claims adjuster left me dealing with other people's disasters, all the while grappling with the biggest disaster of my own. Nights were the worst, staring at the ceiling in our half-empty bedroom, sheets still smelling faintly of her shampoo. I'd replay the last conversation, her hasty departure, the cold determination in her eyes. "You'll never give me the life I truly want," she'd said. "Ethan can." Ethan, the millionaire, the prince in shining armor who'd whisked her away in his black Mercedes. I told myself I'd move on. At 32, heartbreak felt like a vicious teenage drama, but it was real. My friends and family tried to console me. My mother suggested I take a trip, clear my head. My father muttered something about good riddance, but I still bristled at that notion. I couldn't flip a switch and stop caring about Fiona. Even if she'd left me in the cruelest way, part of me ached to see her one last time to understand why. But she never contacted me. Not a single text, no call, no closure. Through a mutual friend, I learned she'd moved into a high-rise condo in the swankiest part of the city, Ethan's domain. People whispered about the fancy dinners, the trips to art galleries. I tried not to dwell on it, but every time I scrolled through social media, I half expected to see photos of them. Curiosity gnawed at me even when I fought to let it go. Time passed slowly. I threw myself into work, sank into Netflix binges, occasionally forced myself out for drinks with coworkers. The memory of Fiona lingered in small, unexpected corners. A postcard we'd bought on a road trip to the coast, pinned to the fridge. Her brush left behind in the bathroom drawer. For a while, I left them where they were, half hoping she'd return. Eventually, I gathered the courage to pack them into a box. That, I told myself, was the final step. She wasn't coming back. Around the 3-month mark, I heard rumors that Fiona and Ethan were engaged. My chest tightened at the news. Engaged so soon? I tried to bury that ache, reminding myself she'd chosen her path. I was just the discarded ex, a footnote in her story. My friend Trevor, who'd known Fiona in passing, texted me a link to an article about a philanthropic event Ethan hosted. The accompanying photo featured Fiona in an elegant navy gown, beaming at Ethan's side, her hand on his lapel. I stared at that image far longer than I care to admit. Did she look truly happy, or was that forced? Another friend, Allison, who was always more blunt, cornered me one day at a coffee shop. "Jake, you gotta let it go. She's gone. She traded you for a life of champagne and caviar. Don't let this poison your future." I nodded, swallowing hard. Allison was right. I tried to block Fiona from my mind, tried to focus on forging ahead. She had her castle in the sky, I had my small, lonely reality. But at least it was mine, untainted by illusions of grandeur. Just as the 6-month mark loomed, a piece of mail arrived that shook me. I opened my mailbox to find a small envelope with no return address, postmarked from somewhere out of state. Inside, I found a single note in Fiona's handwriting. "I need to talk to you. Please call me." The shock nearly made me drop the letter. Why, after half a year of silence, did she want to talk now? My first instinct was to tear it up and throw it away. But curiosity won. I texted the number she provided. "What do you want?" She replied almost instantly with, "Please, it's urgent." Let's meet? My stomach twisted. Part of me wanted to tell her to rot in the bed she made. But old habits die hard, and heartbreak left a raw vulnerability that made me desperate for closure. So I agreed to meet at a neutral cafe, insisting on broad daylight. She accepted. When the day came, I arrived early. The cafe was a cozy place we used to frequent for Sunday brunch, a fact that stung. I found a corner table, fiddled with my phone, tried to calm my racing heart. Then she walked in. She looked different. Thinner, her hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, wearing a simple jacket and jeans. No sign of the designer outfits she once flaunted. Her face seemed drawn, eyes carrying heaviness. I almost didn't recognize her. She spotted me and approached hesitantly. Gone was the confident stride I remembered. "Hey," she whispered. I nodded stiffly, motioning for her to sit. My throat felt tight, brimming with unsaid words. "How could you? Why are you here?" But I let her speak first. Fiona began haltingly, "I'm sorry, Jake, for everything. I know I hurt you." She swallowed, eyes flickering with shame. "I left because I believed Ethan could give me a life of excitement and wealth. I was bored with what we had. But it wasn't the fairy tale I expected." Her voice trembled as she described the initial whirlwind with Ethan. Lavish parties, expensive gifts, trips abroad. For a brief moment she was enchanted, convinced she'd made the right choice. But cracks emerged. Ethan's controlling nature, his dismissiveness toward her opinions, the subtle barbs about her background. Over time his temper flared. He'd belittle her in front of his affluent friends. She realized she was more of a trophy than a partner. "I felt suffocated," she said, tears trailing down her cheeks. My heart clenched. Part of me felt vindicated, like, of course that's what happened. But another part ached at seeing her so broken. "So, you want what, exactly? Pity?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. She shook her head. "No. I want a second chance with you if that's even possible. I miss our life. I miss you. I realize now you were the one who truly cared about me. I threw it away for illusions of grandeur." She wiped her tears. "I left him a few weeks ago. He'd escalated from emotional abuse to something close to physical. I had to get out." My mind whirled, absorbing this new reality. "You never once reached out before. You just vanished, leaving me in the dust. Why should I believe you now?" Her face crumpled in regret. "I deserve your anger. But I had no courage to face you, not until I was desperate. I have nowhere else to go. I lost my job, my savings are nearly gone, and Ethan cut me off. My parents are out of state, but I couldn't bear to tell them everything." I exhaled, a storm of emotions raging inside. She was effectively homeless, jobless, seeking my shelter. A wave of conflicting instincts battered me: pity, anger, longing, caution. "So you want me to take you back?" I asked bluntly. She nodded, a tear slipping free. "I want to earn your forgiveness. Or at least your help. I know I don't deserve it. But I had to ask." We parted ways that day with no definitive conclusion. She gave me her new phone number. I told her I needed time to think. She texted me several times, apologizing, begging, detailing how wretched she felt. My heart hammered with each message. Shamefully, a part of me was relieved she realized her mistake. But the memory of her betrayal burned. How can I trust her after she stomped on my heart? I turned to therapy again. Roxanne's brow knitted in concern when I recounted Fiona's plea. "Boundaries are crucial here," she warned. "You can empathize with her situation, but ask yourself, is she seeking comfort or truly willing to rebuild trust over time? Are you willing to risk another heartbreak?" I weighed the question, nights spent pacing my tiny living room, stirring black coffee at 2 a.m. The rational part of me screamed to keep the door bolted shut. The emotional part remembered the warmth in Fiona's eyes when we used to laugh at silly jokes or dance in the living room. 6 months had changed both of us. Maybe she'd grown, or maybe she was just desperate. Her repeated texts asking for a meeting to talk next steps left me torn. Eventually, I invited her over. In the bright afternoon light, she arrived wearing plain clothes, hair neatly brushed, a timid expression on her face. She stepped inside my apartment, starkly different from our old shared space, and looked around, perhaps noticing the absence of anything that belonged to her. She set her purse down, hands trembling. We sat on my couch, tension coiled like a steel spring. I demanded an explanation for how she could simply vanish, ignoring me for months. She tearfully recounted how Ethan had insisted that cutting me off was best for her emotional detachment. She admitted at first she was okay with it, intoxicated by wealth and new experiences. "I was selfish," she whispered. "Your feelings never factored into my decisions. I see that now." I pressed her about the money, reminding her of how I struggled to pay rent alone. She offered to repay me but said she had almost nothing left. Her eyes brimmed with genuine remorse. Let me find a job, rebuild my finances. I'll repay every cent eventually. My head told me to doubt her sincerity, but I saw a flicker of desperation. She truly had no one else to turn to. Anger twisted my gut. You want me to house you, feed you while you figure your life out? After everything you put me through? She bowed her head. I know it's unfair to ask. If you can't let me stay, at least help me find a short-term solution. Please. A broken plea hovered in her words, the once proud woman now trembling in contrition. Against the advice of some friends, I found myself torn between empathy and self-preservation. Some said, dude, she used you. Don't let her do it again. Others pointed out that giving her a chance might bring closure, maybe even a second shot at love, if trust could be rebuilt. I personally felt battered, longing for the finality I never got. But she was right there asking for my help. In the end, I compromised. I told her I'd pay for a cheap motel for a week while she searched for work. She could not move into my apartment. That boundary was firm. She accepted with tearful gratitude. Over the next days, I watched from a cautious distance as she pounded the pavement, dropping resumes at potential employers. She'd text me updates, interview at a diner. Fingers crossed or no luck yet, but I won't give up. My chest tightened each time, a swirl of pity and memories. Occasionally we'd share a coffee in the motel lobby, discussing her progress. She seemed genuinely remorseful, no trace of the arrogance that once ridiculed my small life. She'd ask about my world, how I'd coped. Sometimes we laughed at old inside jokes. But the ghost of betrayal lurked in every corner of our exchanges, preventing any real closeness. Eventually, Fiona landed a job as a receptionist at a local business park. It wasn't glamorous, but it was a start. With her first paycheck, she insisted on buying me dinner as a thank you. We picked a simple restaurant, ironically the same place we used to frequent on date nights. The meal was fraught with nostalgia. She asked if there was any chance of us trying again, tears glistening in her eyes. She said she missed the warmth of our shared bed, the comfort of building a future together, even if it wasn't gilded in gold. I confessed that I still cared about her, but trust wouldn't come easy. If you stay in my life, I said, voice trembling, you have to earn back my faith. Step by step. That means no more secrets, no more illusions. And no living together, not yet. I expected her to balk. Instead, she nodded earnestly. I understand, she whispered. I'll do whatever it takes. So began a slow, hesitant dance of reconciliation. We started by meeting once a week for coffee or dinner, talking about our days, carefully sidestepping triggers from the past. She shared about her new job's challenges, stiflingly basic tasks, coworkers half her age. I told her about my therapy sessions, how they taught me to set boundaries and value my own worth. Over time, the bitterness ebbed, replaced by a fragile companionship. One evening, she broke down in tears, apologizing again for the pain she caused. I held her hand, uncertain whether comfort was wise, but something in her brokenness tugged at me. She said she'd realized how easily illusions of wealth overshadowed the simple joys we once shared. I had it good with you, she admitted. We might have had a modest life, but it was real. Still, I reminded her, and myself, that words alone meant nothing without consistent action. She kept her new job, saving money to repay me. She found a small, cheap apartment, partly funded by her meager salary. I occasionally pitched in with advice, or helped her lug thrift store furniture. Each step proved she was committed to standing on her own feet, not just clinging to me for salvation. Months passed. Our interactions grew warmer, overshadowed less by regrets. She discovered new passions, volunteering at a local animal shelter, something she'd never considered before. I saw glimpses of the woman I originally fell for, the one with a gentle heart and playful humor. My wariness remained, but a flicker of hope kindled. Then came the day she invited me to her tiny studio apartment for dinner. I arrived with a bottle of cheap wine, unsure if this was a date or just friends. The cluttered space, barely enough room for a small couch and a kitchenette, felt worlds away from the lavish high-rise she once boasted about. But I sensed her pride. She'd earned this place by honest work, not illusions. She cooked a simple pasta dish and we ate by candlelight. Midway through, she hesitantly reached across the table to hold my hand. I let her. The moment felt loaded with unspoken meaning. The warmth of her skin reminded me of old times, but also signaled how far we'd traveled through heartbreak and remorse. I'm not asking to move back in, she murmured, eyes shining with tears. I just want you to know I'm grateful you didn't give up on me entirely. A swirl of emotions churned. I never wanted to give up on you, I admitted, voice thick. But you left me no choice. Now it's on you to show you've changed for good. She nodded, tears slipping free. I will, she said softly, and for once I believed she meant it. Over time we drifted into a cautious relationship, forging a new dynamic. We refrained from calling it dating, the word felt too loaded. Instead, it was a reintroduction of trust. I'd spend an occasional Saturday with her, exploring a farmer's market, hearing her stories about how she overcame the lure of quick wealth. She'd timidly bring up the concept of moving forward together, maybe traveling again, building a small future. I'd remind her we were nowhere near that stage. She'd accept it, respecting my pace. Our friends watched with skepticism. Some called me a fool, but I couldn't deny that a part of me still loved her. People change, I told myself. She'd hit rock bottom with Ethan, realized the emptiness of that path. But I also guarded my heart, ensuring I wasn't enabling a repeat betrayal. We had serious conversations about finances, trust, boundaries. She swore to never keep secrets about money or her whereabouts again. Each day she proved her honesty, my walls lowered a fraction. 6 months later, 1 year after she originally left, she proposed an idea. Let's go back to that cabin by the lake we loved, just for a weekend. To see if we can find closure or a new beginning. The cabin in question had been our getaway spot, a place of sweet memories before everything crumbled. My chest tightened at the mention, but I agreed. Perhaps returning there would show me if we truly had a chance or if the illusions of our past romance lingered. The cabin looked unchanged, rustic wood paneling, a porch overlooking the still waters. The crisp mountain air revived old recollections of laughter and love. This time, though, we arrived with a trunk full of emotional baggage. We spent the first evening in silence, gazing at the star-studded sky from the porch. Then, in the flickering glow of a small campfire, Fiona laid her heart bare. She described how, as a child, she'd grown up poor, envying classmates with fancy clothes and big houses. That longing for wealth shaped her adult decisions, culminating in her leaving me for Ethan's millions. The heartbreak of realizing money couldn't fix her internal void haunted her. She wept, admitting she never meant to cause me such pain, but recognized she couldn't see beyond her own insecurities. I listened, tears prickling my eyes. Then I shared my perspective, how her betrayal had shattered my sense of self-worth, how I wrestled with shame, wondering if I was too simple to keep her. We both acknowledged the scars, the damage done. But in the quiet hush of that night, we also recognized how far we'd come in rebuilding trust. By dawn, a tentative peace settled between us. We hiked along the lakeshore, shoulders brushing in companionable silence. Each step felt like a step away from the past's toxicity. Was I ready to wholeheartedly trust her again? Not entirely. But I felt the stirrings of genuine love re-emerge, stronger for having survived heartbreak. As we drove home from the cabin, Fiona reached over and squeezed my hand. I know it'll take time, maybe years, to fully trust me, she said softly. But I'm willing to put in the work every day. I nodded, swallowing emotion. Me too, I whispered, letting the warmth of that small gesture fill me with cautious hope. We decided on a plan. Maintain separate living spaces for now, continue therapy, couples therapy this time if we felt ready. We'd keep finances separate, each responsible for our own bills. No illusions, no secrets. Friends were stunned to see us together, but we didn't owe them explanations. This was our journey, shaped by pain but tempered with sincerity. Fiona found a stable administrative role, started therapy on her own to untangle her obsession with wealth. I remained in mine, focusing on building a more secure sense of self. Over dinners and slow weekends, we discovered new aspects of each other. She admitted that my stability was part of what drew her initially, yet ironically, it also sparked her fear of a boring life. I admitted that I'd sometimes taken her for granted, failing to see how restless she was. A year after that dramatic day she walked out on me, we stood at a scenic overlook above the city, watching the sunset paint the sky in gold and pink. She turned to me, tears glinting in her eyes, and said, "Thank you for giving me a chance to prove I've changed." I rested a hand on her cheek, the memory of heartbreak still a faint echo. "Thank you for putting in the effort to show me you're worth trusting again," I replied. The soft breeze carried away our whispered confessions. We both understood that forgiveness didn't erase the past, but it allowed us to shape a different future. No grand ceremony marked our reconciliation. No ring of renewed vows yet. But we had each other's presence, each other's honest conversations, and a day-by-day approach to forging a relationship that might outshine the illusions of wealth she once craved. The journey ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in a long while, I felt grounded in genuine love, tested by betrayal, tempered by remorse, but resilient enough to begin anew.